Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. I'm Chad. In today's video, I'm going to show you 8 easy steps to DIY winterize your RV. Now, of course, you want to follow the instructions that are in the manual that came with your camper, but these 8 steps are the steps I take every fall to winterize our Coachman Chaparral 5th wheel RV. Now let me show you the tools I use, and I'll put Amazon affiliate links down in the description of this video so that you can order these things if you don't already have them. This one actually came with our camper. I keep it under the bed. This is a connection that allows me to use suction from the pump of the camper to pull the RV antifreeze into the system. So this hose, extremely important to the process and came with our camper. We'll show you where to use it in a little bit. I do use RV and marine antifreeze. I'll put a link to some jugs of this down in the description. You can also pick these up at the local hardware store or a Walmart. I use typically 2.5 to 3 gallons. This has a pretty big water system in this camper. I want to make sure I get to every single spigot, every single faucet, so that it's all winterized properly. Now I know some people like to use compressed air and just blow the air out of the lines. I understand that that works for a lot of people, and I'll explain to you later on in this video why I think this is a much better and safer system to ensure that you don't have any blowouts in the lines or a ruined pump. Another thing we need is a socket to remove the drain plug in the hot water heater, and I always use these Fresh Cab rodent repellents inside the camper. They smell a lot like pine, and they're supposed to help keep the mice out. We found that they don't always keep the mice out, but there's other things you can do, which we'll talk about, to make it easier in the spring to clean up if the mice do get inside. So let's get started. 8 easy steps, DIY. This is kind of a pre-step. If you haven't already done this, you want to do it before you start this process, but you want to make sure your black water and your gray water are completely drained out of the tanks. Now usually you do these steps after you're done camping, so that's why it's not part of our winterization process. But if you haven't done that, make sure that you drain the black water and the gray water. And with our trailer, there's 2 spots for gray water. One comes out there with the black water, and back here there's another gray water drain. So our step 1 is to drain all the fresh water from the freshwater tank. This camper has an over 80-gallon freshwater tank, and I always leave some water in here throughout the summer just in case we'd have a power outage or a storm and we'd need to use this water for bathrooms or something like that. We'd have a little bit of reserve water in the camper for emergencies. Well, now before wintertime, we've got to get that water out of there so it doesn't freeze into a big, huge ice cube. On this camper, the freshwater tank is just about over top of the axle, and the drain is right here. It's just twisting this cap off. Make sure you don't lose that cap. I set it on top of the axle so I know where it is, and that's going to take some time to drain. Now I pulled the camper out primarily from the building because of this drain. I didn't want 80 gallons of water draining in there in the building. The camper was parked right here. You can see the tracks along the cement. I pulled it out because here at the back of the building where we have the basketball court, the floor is completely flat. So that water would just kind of spread out everywhere. In the front of the building, we do have a slope towards a couple drains, one here and one underneath the pontoon boat. But for the water to get to there, we'd have to pull the camper out anyway. So I decided to just pull it all the way out of the building. We'll do our winterizing out here, and then I'll back it back in place. I open up the rear kitchen here because this is one of the places we will be running water to winterize. And I like to go ahead and we'll move our Blackstone oil and water. Open up the faucet here for the hot water side because our next step is draining the hot water tank. So our hot water tank is a 6-gallon tank. We want to relieve the pressure first so it doesn't go crazy when we pull the drain plug out. We have a nylon drain plug that does not have the diode sulfur rod in it. That's what my 15/16 wrench was for. Now it's a tight squeeze in here, so what I usually do is put the socket on first, and then you don't even have to put the wrench all the way onto the extension there. Just turn it lightly. The reason we relieved the pressure first was so that this doesn't shoot out at us and completely shower us with water. I have learned that lesson in the past. And 6 gallons will drain from there. Another reason to be out here in the gravel, just more water draining out of the camper. So that's step 2. And the reason we turned this hot water valve on was to let air into there so that the water can drain out of the hot water tank. We've got the fresh water draining under the camper, that was step 1. We've got the hot water draining out of the hot water tank, that was step 2. Step 3 is right here. It says drain outlet on our camper, but this is the low point drain. You can see there are 2 drains here, 1, 2. We're going to take the caps off of those, and that will let the low point of the hot and cold water drain out. There's 2 of them to do. So we're doing a lot of draining of all the water that's in the system first. The next thing we want to do is here inside the camper, and I keep this screwdriver in the camper. Got this at Harbor Freight, I believe. It's got a square tip on it, and that serves one primary purpose every spring and fall. Now this is going to be in a different location in each camper, but in our camper, down here below the refrigerator is an access panel, and this is the back of the hot water heater. This square bit is required to take these screws out to gain access to the hot water heater shutoff. So for years I was looking around for my tools. I only had one square bit in my toolbox. I was always looking around for where that is, so I just bought one to keep here in the camper. Now in here is the hot water heater. You can see there's a couple shutoff valves. So what we want to do is that middle one that's got the red and blue, we want to open that one. That is our bypass. So this will let the water go around the hot water tank. We're going to close this one off. This is the hot water coming out of the tank. Close this one off, the cold water going into the tank. Just like that. So shut off, bypass, open. The purpose for that is as we're pumping our RV antifreeze through the system, it'll bypass the hot water tank, which we know will be empty and not have any water in it, so that we're not pumping that RV antifreeze into the hot water tank. Here's a bonus step. If you've got a refrigerator like this one, where these latch shut, in the wintertime you don't want your refrigerator to get all moldy, so you can get these clips that are a hold open clip. They just go over top of the latch like this, and that keeps the door open a crack so that it doesn't get all moldy and mildewed inside. Now that our hot water tank has drained, we can put our cap back in. We won't make this super tight, but we will put it back in. I know some people leave it out and let that breathe out, and that is a good idea to keep it from getting stale in there. But if you could have a mouse crawl into here, I think that would be my bigger worry, as a mouse living in the hot water tank and then dying in the hot water tank in the wintertime. Okay, we're halfway done. That was super easy, didn't take hardly any time. I'm going to put the caps back on the low point drain and the cap back on the freshwater drain, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. We have these 2 ends that we want to put the caps back on. If we didn't put the caps back on this, when we pump our RV antifreeze in, it would just all drain out of the lines to these low point drains. Little bit of a trickle coming out of here, but it's mostly empty. Make sure that all of my faucets are closed. I've already closed the ones inside the camper. Now the outside kitchen is closed, because our next step, number 5, is connecting the RV antifreeze. Step 5 is pumping the RV antifreeze through the system, and in this camper it's much easier than our previous camper. So in a previous camper, what we had to do was take the RV antifreeze jug with a hand pump, connect the end of that hose from the hand pump into the city water inlet, and pump the water through the system. That took at least 2 people, and it was a long and hard process. This is much easier. You can see here in the controls, it says city water hookup or winterize, both knobs upright. So we're going to turn this one. Then this hose I mentioned earlier, connects here. I know it looks a little confusing because it seems like this would be the TV cable hookup. That's actually up above. This port is for winterizing. So we screw this onto here. You saw that I took the little cap out. This was stuck on there. I took that out. That actually goes in the lid. Now what that's going to do is going to pull suction through this hose to winterize. I'm going to put my cap right here so I don't forget it. Open up a jug. Just enough space for the hose to go down in. Then the other thing I like about this camper is you don't need 2 people. I can put that hose down in like that, and it will pull from the jug while I run water inside. And you want to run water inside by turning the pump on, letting it pressurize with the RV antifreeze, and then going to each faucet and turning on the water, hot and cold, to pump this pink fluid through all the lines in your camper. Now I mentioned earlier that some people like to just use compressed air. Now the problem with that system is there's actually separate lines, at least in our camper, from the city water to the lines and from the pump water to the lines. So if we used our city water inlet and pumped compressed air through the system, we'd be missing about 6 feet of water lines and the pump. So there's a chance that that 6 feet of water lines or the pump could get ruined if they still had water in them. This method ensures that I get RV antifreeze through the entire pumping water system of the RV. You'll notice that we are on the driver's side of the camper and the pump is just behind that wall. So the furthest part from the pump is here on the passenger side of the camper, all the way back at the outside kitchen. That's where I'll pump the antifreeze to first, so it goes the whole distance first, and then I'll go to the closer outlets as we winterize the rest of the camper. But to start that process, we've got to get inside the camper here and turn the water pump on. In our camper, that control panel is inside this door. Water pump. Here, I kick on there. It's going to pressurize. And it takes almost half a gallon just to pressurize the system. We're back here at the outside kitchen. We'll do the hot water side first. I like to pull the drain plug out. That's clear water still left in the hose. You'll see it slowly makes its way to pink. You want to make sure that the water we're seeing down there in the sink, which needs cleaned, is pink. Now we want to do the same thing with the cold water. So the pump is pulling that water out of the line. You'll see we're going to go back to clear here because we're going through a different set of lines. And then it's going to go back to pink once that pink water starts pumping through. Now that means that we've done the hot and the cold back here. This faucet is now winterized. You can see that used just about the whole jug. We'll put another jug in. Okay, next we'll do the kitchen sink. Again, we'll start with the hot side. Starts out clear water. You can hear we've got some air in the line there. Clear. And now we're pink. Do the cold water side. Do the bathroom sink next. Hot water. Clear. Sounds like we need more jug. Okay, we put our next jug in. Waiting on pink. Now we're pink on the hot side. Cold side went back to white. Cold side's pink. To do the shower, we disconnect the end, the shower faucet, run it down through here, put it right next to the drain so that we're draining right into the drain rather than getting, you can see we got some pink on here already. So I like to hold this while I turn on the water. Hot water. Pink. Cold water. Back to clear. Pink. Now it doesn't usually get the last little bit of the jug. You can see there's some left. So what I do is I just pour that into the next jug. So we've poured 3 partials now to make what's left in this jug. And I've got 2 more spots to winterize. The toilet inside, and then this outside spigot right here. So this we'll use our key and open up. Now I'm going to go inside and do the toilet. You'll be able to see this level get pumped down as I winterize the water line into the toilet. The last part of step 5 here, don't want to forget about our outside outlet. So we're going to do hot water first. It's already pink because it's right here beside the pump. And cold water next. And I may never even pumped fresh water through these all summer long, but we'll pump just to make sure. You can see we're getting pretty low in the jug there. Tuck this back in here. Now one winter I forgot to winterize this, or I didn't do it well enough, and this whole unit cracked and we had to replace it. I'll go ahead and turn the pump off so that we're not pumping all that air in. Put this hose back under the bed where I always keep it so I don't lose it. And we used almost exactly 2.5 gallons. Number 6 is preparing for the rodents, because the rodents will like to get in your camper in the wintertime. There's some ways to try to keep them out, but just in case you do get in, you don't want to mess in the spring. So what we do, and Jennifer always packs up all our utensils into bins like this, so that you don't end up in the spring having to wash every single knife, fork, spoon. So we've got several of these type of containers that keep the utensils from being infected by the mice. I've got my ammo box here with some outside grill tools. Step number 7, Another rodent repellent, like I said, this Fresh Cab, and I'll put an Amazon affiliate link to these down below in the description. These just are a smell that the mice don't like in the camper, so it's supposed to deter them from getting in. We hang these up in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the back bunk room. I also use these in the tractors and back in the shed, put one in the boat, just so that that smell deters the rodents or the mice from getting in there in the wintertime. For the last step of winterization, step number 8, I've got to back this thing back in there before we can do step number 8. So I'm going to put everything in so that we're clear to back into the building. It's always easier if you have someone helping you, but if you don't have someone helping you back into a building like this, it's a good idea to get out multiple times, check, make sure you know where you're going, make sure you know how far you can go back. I was trying to use the dust along the ground and my wheel chocks as a guide because I left them right where it had been parked when I pulled it out. It still took me a couple attempts to get it straightened out and in here the way I wanted it. Okay, let's review the first 7 steps. I've got my notes here with me. Number 1 was drain all the fresh water from the freshwater tank. Number 2, drain the hot water heater tank. Number 3, drain the low point drains. Number 4, close off the hot water heater so that the RV antifreeze doesn't go into that. Number 5, took the longest amount of time pumping the RV antifreeze through all the faucets and spigots of the camper. Number 6, store your utensils and other things you don't want mice to get into in separate containers. Number 7, use that Fresh Cab or other type of deterrent for rodents to get into the camper. And number 8, keep that battery charged. Now inside our camper right here, there is a full battery shutoff. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm gonna need a light. So there's the battery shutoff. We could completely turn the battery off from the system by turning that. But I actually leave it on because we use the system to charge it. Now, if you're not storing your camper somewhere that you can access electricity and charge the battery while it's being stored, you probably want to take the battery out, take it home with you, put it on a charger like this maintainer charger. I'll put a link to something like this down below. That'll maintain that battery throughout the wintertime. Since our camper is stored indoors in a building with electricity, we can connect electricity to the regular power system of the camper, and it will keep that battery charged all throughout the winter. So here I've got my cord coming up to the battery. Just plug in, and that will keep the battery charged in the camper. What I like to do sometimes is take some aluminum foil and wrap around here, because the mice do like to crawl up this cord, fit in this tiny little hole, and then live in the camper. So that's one way to deter them, is to plug that up with something. Another thing I've done is taken the cord and, gone up and down a couple times, so it's like a little trick for them to get in. Can push it behind this. I've done that before. So then they're climbing in different directions, trying to climb up the cord, but I will stuff that with something so they don't get inside there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video of the 8 quick tips to winterize your own camper. This is a DIY project. I don't think you need to pay somebody else to do it. It's easy enough process as long as you follow the instruction manual on how to winterize it, and hopefully this video also helped you out. Leave those comments down below if I forgot something in the process, or if your system's a little bit different, more efficient, or a different type of camper and the system is different for that. Leave those comments. That'll help out other people in the future. Please, if you haven't already, click that like button for the video. And if you're not already a subscriber to Purple Collar Life, consider clicking the subscribe button. We'd love to have you follow us along. We are a channel out of Northwest Pennsylvania. Purple Collar Life is the combination of our white collar day jobs and our blue collar rural living, using things like tractors, log splitters, chainsaws, camping, and rural life here in Northwest Pennsylvania. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again the next time.